You need to be true and familiar to your target audience who you're tapping into. And you can absolutely be that only if you are true to your values, true to the story you're telling, true to the problem of what you're trying to solve. If you're not true to the problem of what you're trying to solve, then the audiences are able to see through that it's just a narrative rather than anything else. And if you build the brand on top of that, then you're winning with quality and winning the hearts of your consumer, be it B2B or B2C.
Yeah.
I think companies, in my opinion, are gonna win who have solid product, who are trustworthy, who have stronger narratives, familiar with people, and who have very solid distribution with multiple channels which are existing more and more, because the consumption on digital is not going to go down, it's just going to incrementally increase if you're solving the right problem which consumers are actually facing, right? And if you're able to connect everything together, then your distribution across these channels will just reward you of what you're trying to do.
Down for B2B category creation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think
Who will dominate the future market? Will it be the companies with the best products or the companies with the strongest attention ecosystem?
Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in, where we connect the dots between MarTech and marketing landscape. Stay tuned to MarTech 360 as we explore key strategies for your marketing success.
Welcome to MarTech 360 podcast, powered by Data Demand. I'm Samarth, and for years, demand generation has been viewed through the lenses of leads, funnels, attribution models, and pipeline metrics. But perhaps the companies winning today are doing something fundamentally different. They are influencing buyers long before they are ready to buy. Markets are won before even buyers enter the funnel. And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today. Joining me is Anurag Sure, Senior Director, Strategy at Dentsu. Anurag is passionate about lifelong learning, solving complex challenges, driving meaningful change. He believes in the power of collaboration, continuous improvement, and creating impact that extends beyond business outcome. He has spent more than a decade in B2B and B2C. And the most interesting part is, with the AI reshaping the market, attention becomes increasingly fragmented and trust emerging as the ultimate competitive advantage. And there's no better time to think how demand is created and captured. Anurag, welcome to MarTech 360 podcast. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Samarth. Great to be here. Look forward for the interesting conversation with you, and also learning a bit from you as well with your vast experience and having done so many podcasts with interesting people. So look forward to the entire session.
Absolutely. Anurag, my endeavor has been to understand the evolving landscape of entire B2B. We started with way in the back with telemarketing, emails, lead generation, but things have changed, and and that is what I explore with all the people that I interact with, and it gives me an opportunity to learn from their experience and kind of reinvent the entire thought process. But yeah, thank you for being so kind. Right. Let's think of reimagining or rethinking the demand generation. Let's start with slightly something which is provocative. Do you think most of the companies still fundamentally misunderstand demand generation?
I think companies do understand demand generation fundamentally, but I think the marketeers who are running demand generation might be fundamentally misunderstanding demand generation. There are two aspects of demand generation, right? When you think about demand generation from a larger picture sort of overlaps from category creation, but also capturing demand which exists in market, right? A lot of times, I think there are a lot of geopolitical issues, the company's own bottom line, top line, and a lot of these things going on where a lot of the companies want immediate results and immediate thought process, because when you kind of do demand generation, it is from a thought process that I can start attributing some success to my overall overarching marketing. And that is where the demand generation starts happening, and that is where you start attributing things which goes down the funnel. But when you take two steps back and when you look at the larger picture, demand generation is also in a lot of ways about how can I create a category which my innovative products could essentially be tied down to. So demand generation is not, in my opinion, in my thought, demand generation is not a very linear thought process. I think it's a bigger term. It changes perspectives from how you're putting it in a sentence. Demand generation could be different for a company. Demand generation could be different for a marketer. Demand generation as a whole concept could be much more broader than what just a marketer or a company is actually thinking about. So in plain words, to answer your question, I think it would be different from different perspectives, but I fundamentally feel companies do understand demand generation. It's just that when it flows down to marketers who are essentially executing that strategy, that is where it kind of dilutes down a little bit.
Right. I completely agree. And, to the point, I say that usually, demand generation across any industries, we have reduced to dashboards, attribution models, and conversion rates. We are all across, because those are the benchmarks that where we track. But, so my question to you is, has B2B marketing become too obsessed with these attributions and short-term metrics?
I think the overall marketing has become too obsessed, Samarth. It's probably not just siloed to B2B marketing. I think B2C, of course, has been super obsessed, but I think B2B also is getting more and more obsessed into data, metrics, dashboarding, analytics, data science part of things. But I also feel fundamentally that's because you are able to measure that. But the larger picture is you're not able to measure a lot of things, but you just want to measure and kind of quantify the things which you are able to measure and show it to the larger teams that, what, marketing can be measured, and this is what the impact of marketing is to your business. But also being a little provocative here from my thought, I think it's also because when you look at B2B companies, their core fundamental has never been marketing. It has always been their products, services, how they're able to give the customer a better experience, the UI, the UX, the overarching product and services part of any of the B2B businesses, be it finance, be it technology, be it any industry vertical. So marketing is always trying to prove their worth to the business, right? And when you're trying to prove that marketing is working to business, what is the way somebody can actually start showing that marketing is actually working and marketing is actually functioning and actually helping business? That is where a lot of marketers go back to data to kind of show that this is helping drive your business. But I think everybody understands, but it's just an unspoken thing that there are, out of 100 things, 90 things cannot be measured. 10 things you are able to measure, but in those 10 things, you're just kind of quantifying your impact to the larger business.
Right. That brings a very interesting point that you mentioned. But, just to add on to that, are we optimizing for what is measurable rather than memorable? You said, 90% of the things cannot be measured.
I mean, that's an arbitrary number. I'm sure it's not a number which is coming from a particular source or something. Just to be clear on that.
True.
I think we are absolutely optimizing for what could be measured a lot of times, but on that tangent, there are certain marketers and certain companies who are trying to see if they can be memorable, create those business campaigns, create those marketing campaigns which can build legacy over time. Those probably will be the companies and marketing campaigns which actually and absolutely stand out. But yes, majority in the marketing domain and marketing ecosystem is trying to optimize which can be measured.
True. And now moving on to the buyers. And if buyers, already know, about a product or a service, and, they know whom to trust before entering the funnel, then what's the actual role of demand generation today? Because with so much of content creation, your information is available.
Yeah. And I think, Samarth, that is where I go back to that part where I mentioned demand generation is not just about converting people who are in market, right? While people who are in market might absolutely be knowing what they want and what they are looking forward for, but there are two roles there, right? One role is creating the category. Like if I'm coming up with a new product and service where the category really doesn't exist, that is where I start making people understand and telling them that this is your problem right now. Maybe you're not seeing the problem, but there is a problem and I can solve the problem for you, right? And that is where I think one part of demand generation happens. That is where the marketers don't even, marketers are trying to say to the consumers and users that let us solve the problem for you. That is the first part. The second part, where people in the category where people are already are in market, what happens then? That is where the role of demand generation slightly shifts, and the role of demand generation really comes from a perspective of telling the user that while you are in your market and you understand this is what you require, but we are here to give you a better service. That is, you're just trying to convert the user, create a perception, give an understanding the consumer that there are options beyond what you think is the best option. You're just trying to do a conversion at that point of time, not an absolute conversion, but a conversion of a mindset that even if you can consider evaluation to my company, I think the job of marketing is done.
Right. And, do you think that buyers buy the best solution or the most familiar narrative?
I think it's twofold. They buy the most familiar narrative, but they stick with the best solution available.
Right.
If they buy familiar solution, and if your product is not good, then they will probably leave and go to other solution which is familiar plus a great product. I think it's a two-step process where familiarity helps you get into the consideration set and then convert, but a great product and great service let you defend the business for a longer term stickiness.
True. For a short term, let's say, and this is more relevant in B2C, can an average product with a better story beat technically superior product, specifically from the B2B side, so B2C side, not B2B?
I think absolutely it can beat. And I think a lot of storytelling, the brand building part of it, that's why if you'll see the companies do focus and traditionally have focused a lot on building the brand. And if you look at building the brand is all about the story, all about making your brand familiar with people and making them understand, relate, link back to the story. So I think brand building still has a larger role to play. But having said that, I think it also depends a lot on how the geopolitical, how the volatility, how the industries are moving. If there is an absolute growth in terms of your company's expectation, then marketeers and then the companies invest more on brand building. But if there is a struggle from an economy standpoint, then there is always a quarter-to-quarter thought process where the brand building essentially takes a little bit of backseat and focus more on middle to lower funnel.
So I completely agree because, it does boil down to too many parameters.
Yeah.
And, if that's true, perhaps, markets are won by narratives and not features. Just for the sake of saying, I'm just holding this thought. And then there is LinkedIn as well. A lot of branding is done on LinkedIn. If you look at, has LinkedIn become the new battleground for B2B category creation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it has been traditionally, and it did become a battleground for a lot of B2B demand generation for last couple of years. But it definitely now is an interesting time, Samarth, because the content creation has become so easy and so democratized, right?
Yeah.
And when it has become so easy and so democratized, it will be very interesting to see how it will evolve and what will be the pace and what will be the nature of demand generation in some of these platforms. Because if you look at the platforms and the consumption of users on these platforms, that is evolving rapidly and massively. A lot of times, while LinkedIn has been a place for a lot of C-suite professionals, founders, entrepreneurs to go there, post, and do a lot of things, but we keep saying there is a large overlap between people who consume LinkedIn to a lot of other social media channels as well. So what is the intermix of multiple social media channels coming together and how you are using multiple social channels together to build your narrative? could be an interesting space to look at. Traditionally, as you rightly mentioned, LinkedIn has been a battleground and has become a battleground, but it might not be the same in future.
I completely agree, because this is something that even I've been personally watching this space, and I'm feeling that there's so much of content creation, that the trust is going down.
Yeah.
Everybody, with the AI, which we're going to talk about in a while, but I think there's so much. Even I was thinking, talking to one of the content creators, and he pointed out that it's not about more content; it's about how you align it with your brand positioning, your target audience, and give them the message that really resonates with them. Because and do you think that people are people starting to trust uh, people more than the logos because of so much of content creation?
Oh, 100%. I think with the rise of certain platforms which deal with peer validation and advocacy, and also if you look at the younger generation, I think younger generation people are having so much exposure to multiple different things. They are able to cut through the logos. I think things have massively evolved in last couple of years and continues to evolve more and more aggressively. That just the logos, while logos are aspirational to a certain section of audiences, but if you kind of expand out and see the mass in general, public and general thought process, I think people are able to cut through and they're looking for more honest storytelling, honest narratives, where it is not just about the brands telling it in their campaigns, but actually living with those values, living with those narratives, on showing through their products, services, what they do and what they not do about it. And that, I think, will become more and more. I think you will be punished if you don't live by with the narrative which you're telling as a marketer, as a company. I think you will be rewarded if your company is true. The storytelling is what you believe in, and the storytelling and the users and consumers are able to see through the honesty behind your narrative. And that narrative essentially, see, if you look at any of these channels, right, LinkedIn, Meta, Instagram, any of these channels, these are just distribution channels of what you want to do. And these distribution channels and people are able to cut through those distribution channels, because now it's not about just information being democratized. Now even intelligence is democratized, right? So it's very easy in terms of understanding, and it is definitely changing with younger generation more and more having more and more information and more intelligence in just a click of a button or just a click of a query. And also one last point, Samarth, I think you mentioned an interesting thing about it's not about the volume of content, but about what is the quality, what is the audience you're tapping into. I think that is absolutely true. But I think over the time, the algorithms, how multiple of these platforms kind of reward you is two front. One, how appropriate and how accurate you are in terms of your narrative to what audience, what story you're telling on this platform, and how frequently you're telling the same story. So more and more you do that, more and more you'll be able to reach the right audience. But if you're telling your story just as once in 6 months and once in 1 year, then your story still is behind. So it's a mix of telling the right story to the right people at the right frequency.
That is very, very interesting. And the proof is across markets, across region, across countries, and we have seen the rise of so many companies, specifically trying to solve a particular pain area problem, and every pain area from the content creation to editing to distribution to influencing, there's a tool that solves that particular problem because of the AI. And now everybody has access to AI. Everybody can create content. Everybody has automation. Which raises a very fascinating question: are we entering the era of infinite content but finite attention?
Oh, 100%. I think it's an era of abundance, and in the era of abundance, in the era of abundance, I just feel it's not about the finite attention. I think attention is still, probably if you measure the attention from the landscape of how historically the attention has been there, I think people will give you attention if your narrative and story relates back to them, right? It's not a place where there is attention deficit, but it's a place where there is so much content which doesn't relate to me. If you just look at a tangent of Netflix and YouTube, where there is a longer versions of content, longer storytelling, most of the longer storytelling pieces are being watched by people. If it was true that there is an attention deficit, I don't think the longer versions like 3 hours, 180 minutes, 210 minutes would gain so much of traction. These longer storytelling formats are still pretty much live and gaining traction because the content being created there is very, very rich. It relates to the audience. There is a learning thought process. There is storytelling happening, and it's a pure play rich content. So in the era of abundance and the era of unlimited content, I think the humanness or the quality part of it will probably trump whatever the average content which probably will exist, because in all the places wherever there is abundance, it's only the better ones which kind of rises, and it just will give you a gap between an average to a very, very good content which is available.
Yes, I somewhat agree, and rather than I totally agree on that point that the content creates, but every decision is still emotional when people buy. Whether it's into B2B or B2C, that they look at what the problem it's going to solve for them, how it's going to elevate their life with that particular tool or solution. When we look at the marketers, do you think that the marketers have become too data driven, obsessed with numbers, obsessed with how do we position a brand, and become less human driven?
That's a tough question. I wouldn't. I think they definitely are data driven, but data driven from an optimization perspective, right? But there are marketeers and there are companies which are trying to become more and more human rather than more and more unhuman. And it goes back to the point where I was mentioning, because even marketers are realizing that the audiences are able to cut through the narratives which are not true to the brand. It is becoming more and more evident to marketers that you need to be true and familiar to your target audience who you're tapping into, and you can absolutely be that only if you are true to your values, true to the story you're telling, true to the problem of what you're trying to solve. If you're not true to the problem of what you're trying to solve, then the audiences are able to see through that it's just a narrative rather than anything else. And if you build the brand on top of that, then you're winning with quality and winning the hearts of your consumer, be it B2B or B2C. See, the B2B or B2C, the difference is the longer sales cycle and how you're tapping into consumers' mind so that the consumer can stick with you for the longer duration. In B2B, probably the trust factor plays a lot more bigger role than B2C. But I think cutting through the cutting through the non-true narrative of your brand is something which is becoming more and more evident. And people on just a click of a button can actually see through what have you been doing as a company and what you're showing as a marketing campaign. Does it really match? Is it really something which kind of resonates with me? So I wouldn't say that the marketing is becoming more and more just data driven. I think that is the phase where they were trying to optimize a lot, but now they're actually becoming, I would say now the cyclical loop is going back to becoming more and more human and trying to become more and more storytelling rather than just being very transactional per se.
Right. And one thing that comes to my mind is that people buy emotionally and then justify logically. That's and that's true in every segment, probably in our day-to-day life as well, that when we like things, we buy them emotionally and then justify it logically that I really needed that and stuff.
And even the decision making, right? You do take decisions and emotionally, but then you try justifying by fitting pieces logically.
True, 100%. Perfect. Let's fast forward few years and let's look at that. How what do you think? How will the B2B brands Will they start looking more like a media company with so much of content creation, so much of narrative coming around
Most
from the
likely.
brand angle? Yeah.
Most likely, I think if you look at the company, if you look at the way the marketeers are crafting narratives and crafting stories, they are trying to find the spaces where humans get involved more and more, from business to news to lifestyle. Within lifestyle, you take a tangent of sports, music, and lot many things. And if you look at media companies, that is the direction they have traditionally taken as well, where they kind of write across multiple different tangents of life. So most likely it will go into that space. I just hope that while media companies try to be neutral, but there is definitely a point of view. But I hope the company's point of view is the company's narrative and the company's storytelling, rather than a generic point of view which comes out with more and more content. But if you look at a macro lens, it might look like more of a media company, because a lot of B2B companies and marketers are producing reports, producing content across social media. But Samarth, I think the interesting tangent would be, because if you look at earlier in 2000 to 2010, people used to search and go into these articles and reports and all of that. But I think that will drastically change. I don't think anybody's going to do that next 3-4 years. People are just going to be on your chat GPT, Claude, OpenAI, Perplexity, type it
Yeah.
and get it. So probably companies will try producing articles where they can be indexed more and more with these platforms. And probably the objective will be more to get indexed, so that if somebody searches on any of these, I become there on the top and I get into the consideration set. So
Right.
it will be an interesting tangent. And I'm not sure if media companies are also trying to do that.
Right. No, I don't think so. The media companies are trying to do that, because media companies are trying to create a narrative which they feel is solving a particular problem. But you had a very solid, strong point when you said that the biggest search engines, they have lost their clicks. Because that was one of their biggest advertising revenues from the pay per click, from the on those sort. But now with the LLMs, everybody is getting what they need, and it is in a better way. Earlier we were reading more, we were researching more, but now we are just prompting and getting the the information right in front of us, and through that information we are being influenced. So you have a very solid point that LLMs will play a very big role, specifically on creating that narrative, and it's a very interesting space to watch. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
No, and at this stage, do you think that who will dominate the future market? Will it be the companies with the best products, or the companies with the strongest attention ecosystem?
See, fundamentally, I believe the fundamentals of anything is not going to change, Samarth. I think fundamentally whoever was winning, if you would assume that fundamentally it was always about the best product who wins in the longer term, then it will probably remain the same.
Right.
But the better attention, and again, I think the question has two dimensions if you ask me. One, shorter term win and the longer term win. In the shorter term win, I think the companies with best attention framework probably will win. In the longer term, companies with better products gonna win, hands down. A better attention cannot give you a great product which people will use it for a longer term. You will definitely be considered, you will definitely be bought, but if your product is not comparable, then it will be kind of left out. And I'm saying that because the nature of exposure to the audiences right now is so high that the comparability between products is so easy and so democratized right now.
Right.
And people are not. I also feel from a loyalty perspective, the definition of loyalty is also kind of evolving and changing quite a lot with brands. And I think there are a lot of stats out there right now that how consumers used to be super loyal to certain brands and they used to stick around for years together. That's not the case anymore. I think people are loyal to great products. People are loyal to companies which are solving their problems, because that is what is mattering at the end of the day. And the luxury part of things, that's a luxury, and the aspiration, that's a very small pie on the tip of the iceberg. So if you remove that part, the rest of the pie is essentially about better products and if that product is solving my problem or not. Yeah, I will just take that back to the fundamental, and I think that is not going to change, which fundamentally always been the case.
Right. I mean, yeah, totally agree. But I have a different view to look at here. The companies who already dominate the market, we have seen in the past that companies dominating the market suddenly, go become invalid in the same market in coming years if they don't innovate and consumers shift from one product to another. And at the same time, if the companies this is my opinion, the companies who will win this era will be the one who would be creating or making products evolve with time, and as well as create a strong attention ecosystem, which means they are across different channels. They are saying the right things, they are solving the problem, and they are very honest about things.
Correct.
Because honesty is something which will certainly resonates with a lot of people, with so much of narrative around us. And we know that when the person is being honest, and when he or she is trying to fabricate things, so we are able to relate. Perfect.
So
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I think just one last point on that, and I absolutely agree on that.
Yeah.
I think companies, in my opinion, are gonna win who have solid product, who are trustworthy, who have stronger narratives, familiar with people, and who have very solid distribution with multiple channels, which are existing more and more. Because the consumption on digital is not gonna go down; it's just gonna incrementally increase. Yeah.
100%. 100%. I completely agree. Distribution is the key. Earlier, the word distribution was only specifics to the retail and stuff.
Correct.
But now I think digital distribution is very, very important for marketing as to look at. The rise of Reddit. It's
Yeah.
it is. I go on to Reddit and do my peer-to-peer research because it's incredible the way it influences you.
I'm finding the best restaurants on Reddit. I don't go
Yeah.
to any of these apps which essentially talks about reviews and stuff, but I do go on Reddit to find the best restaurants because that really helps you get the peer validation pretty much as an honest take. And that also brings me to the point where I'm saying the comparison of products and services has been so democratized now, and even LLMs are indexing Reddit so much. And it is what it is. I think that is where the information has been democratized. Now intelligence is also getting democratized.
Very true. Very true. Before we wrap, I have one. I want to leave our listeners with one final thought before we get into our next segment. What's one uncomfortable truth about modern marketing that most companies still refuse to accept? Take your time.
Yeah. This is definitely a tricky question, Samarth.
It is, because I've been wondering on this, because we all do things which we feel are right, which are logical to us, but in the end we don't realize that it is very uncomfortable to the real masses.
I think the uncomfortable truth would probably vary between B2B and B2C. But if you look at the uncomfortable truth of B2B, I think it is largely that marketing is a means to an end. It is basically a function which is helping the business grow. But if business or products and services are not great, marketing cannot help you grow. Because at the end of the day, as what we kind of also spoke about in last 20-25 minutes, the products and services are absolutely the key. Marketing can help you distribute your narrative, right? But if your products and services are not great, then whatever marketing does, it will not bring in things which are tangible enough. That is one. And second, one of the uncomfortable truths about marketing is that most of it is not measurable. And I think we fundamentally hide away from it by saying marketing is becoming more and more data-backed, data-driven and all of that. But that's only certain portion of marketing which is becoming data-backed and data-driven. The larger portion is still multivariable, multivariate, and that absolutely is something which is not solved. If you look at last 20 years, the attribution problem has been existing. Still, I think it's a very tricky space to be in. There is no 0 or 1 solution to it yet. There are solutions, of course, very advanced, but it still solves only a certain portion of your marketing questions. So I would say the uncomfortable truth of marketing still remains that it is still largely very intuition based. So please look at it from a human intuition lens rather than just data thought process. Data is just for you to optimize and get a certain perspective, certain direction. That's about it.
Right. Can we say that, as per me, the most uncomfortable truth about modern day marketing is more is good. I think, whatever you have, you should just work with that, around that, and, create a memorable journey for the customer, be it anywhere.
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. That's a great way to move. All right. Let's finish with a quick rapid fire. We want to know.
Awesome.
Quick answers. Demand capture or demand creation?
Demand creation and then demand capture.
Demand creation and then demand capture. Right. AI generated content, opportunity or pollution?
Pollution now, opportunity in next 2 years.
That's interesting. That's how next 2 years will create opportunity.
I think right now it's pollution because most of the marketers are just using it to create a baseline quality of content.
Mm-hmm.
You're just producing more and more content. But just imagine a world where everybody has created that content. Then the opportunity will come to use your intuition, humanness into it. Then this AI tools will just become a tool for you to create content, but with quality. So it will become an opportunity for you to stand out, to create quality content at volume, which in the past you were not able to do it. Right now it's pollution because you're not thinking from that lens.
Makes sense. Now sense. Most underrated B2B buzzword right now?
Attribution.
Attribution. That's a good one, I would say. Is thought leadership becoming performative?
Yes and no, both. I think there is thought leadership which is existing, which is actually giving food for thought for a lot of individuals, consumers and everything. But of course, thought leadership on certain platforms has now become a table stake for B2B particularly. So yeah, I mean, yes and no, both.
That makes sense. One marketing trend that dies in 5 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've been thinking.
One marketing trend that dies in 5 years. Hopefully the linear funnel journey.
Wow. But I think that journey is also important for for the companies to keep pushing the the information, the narrative. It's all about using it in the fundamentally right manner.
But everybody knows that it's never linear. Most of the marketers, most of the consumers, most of the companies know the consumer journey is never linear. It is a mix of multiple awareness, consideration, awareness to conversion. So it's always, a lot of times goes in a non-linear way, a lot of times goes in a cyclical way. But because we are only able to attribute and because we are able to only market it in a certain fashion, we are using it as a framework that it is done linearly and let's think linearly. And also because you want to attribute your budgets accordingly. But it might be absolutely different in reality.
That's fascinating, interesting. I'll hold on to that thought for a while.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully AI and the advancements in a lot of these technologies, hopefully can bring marketers to a place where they're able to do better in crafting those journeys and then showing advertisements which are more closer to the reality of the audience rather than just from a linear journey perspective. I also think which is happening more and more because there is AI-driven optimization, AI-driven planning, all of that which is pretty much coming up.
True. Interesting. One company shaping perception exceptionally well. It could be one or more.
I think the company which is shaping perception quite good is the recent one, SpaceX. I think it is driving perception really, really well. And if you look at the $1 trillion valuation and it's all about perception right now. It's all about the story that there is a future and you're betting on future.
True. Absolutely. I completely relate. And people who do that, the markets and the markets reward them. That is shown by space.
Yeah, they're just showing future right now. Right now, nobody is selling data centers on space, but that's the future probably.
That's very interesting. One skills marketers desperately need right now.
One skill marketers desperately need?
Right now, in 2026 and onwards.
Finding the quality in the polluted space. Basically, how you can be more intuitive with your experience to get your quality of marketing better.
And think like the customers. I think that's the way. Yeah, that's a very underrated thought process that every marketer has to think or know their customers well and think like them. That what do they need and how do they move around. Because at the end of the day, we all are buyers of some things.
Exactly.
We are consumers, so marketers need to think like consumers, and that's the most underrated skill, I believe. But it's going to do wonders if people are able to think through that.
And think like a customer. Just don't think like an audience segment.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Wow. Anurag, this has been a very fascinating conversation.
Thanks, Samarth. I think it has been interesting, and I think it also helped me stretch the boundaries of my thought process to answer some of your questions. And probably in my job as well, I'll think more and more like a customer and try thinking more and more like a customer as we are all into the marketing space right now.
No, I completely agree. It's been, it was, and I still feel that, it is, we are at a very interesting phase where we are transitioning from, or rather than transitioning, from our own mindsets, rather than what is happening, around us. My biggest takeaways, around this is that demand generation, has to be more than just filling funnels. It has to be, it should be about shaping perception, building trust, and influencing, buyers before they are ready to, engage with the brand.
For sure. And that can only happen if you are true to your narrative, true to your story, be honest about it, give an understanding of what you're solving, and if you're solving the right problem which consumers are actually facing, right? And if you're able to connect everything together, then your distribution across these channels will just reward you of what you're trying to do.
Right. I completely agree. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights. It is, I'm going to go with a lot of thoughts. I'm going to write right after this, my takeaways and put that back in my work. Perfect. Awesome. And, thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who believes that marketing is about more than leads and funnel and about a human connection. See you in the next episode.
We are signing off from this episode of Data Demand, but the journey doesn't end here. Stay tuned to MarTech 360 for more insights and strategies that can help you master the MarTech landscape.